So I basically had a normal childhood. So I grew up in a normal neighborhood, and I guess I could read the paper. I'm thinking a few weeks old. Um, I could read the newspaper. I remember my mom set me down out of the high chair, and then I crawled across the floor and I read the newspaper. I think it was on the third page. And one of the stories was about a story that went on in our neighborhood, which was a lie because I lived in our neighborhood and I knew exactly what went on. So at that point, at that young age, I realized that the newspaper wasn't telling the truth, couldn't be trusted. And another story about a homicide. So my next thought was, how did I wind up on this planet? And when are they going to send me back to the one I came from, which eventually someday, obviously not in this body, but in another one, maybe I'll go back there. Maybe I'll go to another different place. So I had a standard normal childhood. So I played soccer, I went to school and everything. And then the people I was raised with, I had unique training. So I was trained in building models uh, from scratch, building different type of models like Legos and things like that, ships, buildings, planes, trains, and so forth, and building remote control like helicopters and drones and submersible ships and hydroplanes and remote controlled hydroplanes, three-stage solid fuel rockets, um, explosives at like 5, 6, 7, 8, military strategy, chess, um, uh, in the household that I was in, we had a couple shotguns, various drugs. My parents, or the people that were in charge of me, uh, were interacting with people that were from different countries, and they were of varied classes, and they had wild parties, and they were involved with some heavy duty people. And so, anyways, I was trained in weapons and rocketry and building things and devices and chemistry and biology, math, and things before I got into regular schooling. I was already being taught stuff. And I was involved with some other kids that we were training in the same things. And then, like some of the rocketry programs and all that stuff, were a few of my friends were working on. And then also, I was trained in firearms. So at like 5, 6, 7, I'm already able to fire shotguns, pistols. There's weapons around the house. There's 45 ACP. There's 9mm Browning, which I think start World War II. Then there was the Czechoslovakian pistol that started World War I. We had one of those around the house. We had some other paraphernalia. We had some other stuff lying around the house that I don't want to mention because it's gonna open up a can of worms. But I guess I had a different childhood. So there's, I guess, pluses and minuses to everything and all that stuff. So, um, I grew up with loaded firearms as far back as I can remember, um, and explosive devices and things, and various drugs were present where I lived, and some pretty bizarre incidents happen then. So where do I want to go from there? I don't know. I had a pretty unique childhood, and then I had pretty unique training. So I was being trained on a lot of different things. So I have a pretty interesting skill set, and so I had a lot of job offers or opportunities later on in life through coincidences, circumstances, my abilities, and my education afforded me. I basically I could get a job with any company um, in a lower level capacity because of my age and kind of any direction I wanted to go. So I had a lot of different options on the table for my training of stuff I could have done. So I got into being. I guess I'm gonna head there with this because it's a thing that kind of bothers me a little bit. So, um, um, I studied mechanical engineering, obviously, as you can tell, if I studied rocketry and building different things, using different materials and constructing different things and all that. I'm not going to get into the details. And so I got mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, hydraulic engineering, chemical engineering, and various forms of engineering, predominantly mechanical engineering, structural, and but everything in between to make that stuff work and how it works and how you assemble it and how you put it together. There's a certain process. Like you can throw a model in the box. Like I used to just like throw all these pieces on the table and then I would assemble something. Whereas a normal person would read the blueprints and the instructions on how to build something, I would just throw it all on a pile and build it and see how well I did. And then sometimes I would mess up because there's procedures when you build things that are complicated. This is going to come off to the rather, since this isn't an entertaining video, this, or maybe it is to some people, but I didn't always follow the protocol. Sometimes the directions for the things that I built, the blueprints or whatever, weren't accurate and all that. But anyway, so um, I got into mechanical engineering, and then I got into mechanical, and then I worked like 50 different jobs. So I was like a garbage man, sanitation engineer. I couldn't eat rice for a year. I mean, that was back in the day when you had to run up somebody's driveway with the dog barking, dump their garbage can in your garbage can, and run back down to the truck and dump it, and then do that till you had 7,000 pounds of garbage, and freaking you came home and you took a shower and there was like maggots squirming in the drain. So I couldn't eat rice for like I still can't eat white rice after that experience. So, anyways, I did that. I did painting. I was terrible. They called me Seagull because I spilled more paint on the floor than on what I was trying to paint. So, painting was one of my attributes. And then I did moving. And then I did mechanical work on cars and body work on cars. And like delivery and different jobs, newspaper routes and stuff like that. I worked a lot of different jobs. Reason why I did that was because I thought if I want to commit to something for 20 or 30 years of my life, I better like my job. I better like what I do. So I got lucky, and I got a job working as a mechanical engineer for a company that was 108 years old. So uh, they hazed me for 4 years. They hazed the it wasn't one of those jobs that becomes open to the general public ever. It was one of those jobs in the department I was in where either it was handed down from the father to the son, or you were highly degreed college wise. The door, it was really rare that I got into the company that I got into. I lied my way in, and then I was working with a couple of engineers on the first day, and I said, I can see this is really dangerous work, and I don't know a lot about it. And I lied to get my job, and I said, I'll give you guys a couple of choices here. A couple of older guys, they were kind of actually overjoyed that I was honest. And I said, now you can send me back to the employment office where I came from, or you can train me. It's your call. But I just want to tell you that so we don't have any injuries on the first day, because I was involved in a very dangerous type of mechanical engineering. So I guess I'm not trying to brag, but I want to tell the truth. Is I was involved in probably one of the most dangerous forms, one of the most dangerous jobs there is. Um, where I was definitely involved in one of the most dangerous jobs that there is. So I did that for 2 years of my life, and it was predominantly it was predominantly mechanical engineering, but it was all aspects. So that means I worked on planes, I worked on ships, I worked on all different types of ships. I worked in different environments, and I worked in different things, and I worked in different countries, and I worked for different periods of time. And sometimes it was 10 months steady work, 4 months off, 2 months off, and then sometimes it was on off. So it was like you work your tail off, you have no free time, and then you have 2 to 4 months off. So it was a really good job for years and all that stuff. And then what happened was there was a hostile takeover. So after 108 years, the company decided that they would sell out of the family to another company. There was a hostile takeover. I lost my job. Then I got hired back because they didn't want to pay their top engineers, and it was a hostile takeover. And they didn't see the logic in it, and then they started having accidents and losing contracts, so they hired me back. Then I had an insider tell me I was going to get fired once they wanted to get what they wanted to know, and then they were doing practices that I felt, from what I knew, were dangerous, and there was going to be possibly an accident. I didn't agree with the procedure, and then since I was going to be a senior engineer on the project, if something bad happened, the responsibility would fall down on me. So when I learned mechanical engineering, I learned before they had computers like they do now. So when I had to learn metallurgy and statistics and mathematics and tensile strengths of steels or materials and temperatures and conditions of different materials and equipment that I was working with, I had to know this by my brain, by my education, by my experience. It wasn't something that you could get out of a computer or a book. Like nowadays, you can get You can get it out of a computer or you can get it out of a book, but you can't get the experience. You can't buy that. You get the experience by doing it. So I got the experience by getting the experience. But I got extra special experience because I got trained from old pros that taught me the art form that I did for years. So I'm going to stick with mechanical engineering and some feelings I have about. So I want to talk about, like, right now AI is just blowing everything away. I mean, I'm just amazed. I mean, it would have made my job so much. Well, in some ways, it would have made my job a lot easier. Um, so AI is just exponentially exploding, and I'm just really impressed with AI. And I can see a great future with AI, and I think AI will benefit mankind greatly because they'll be able to send robots into, say, conditions that are harmful for human beings to be in, which were some I was in. I had to work in some conditions like that, that were life threatening. If my PPE, my protective equipment that I was using to be on the job didn't function correctly, or I wasn't maintaining it correctly, or monitoring it correctly, and now you can get robots to go in there and do that stuff, or they're maybe not quite yet, but there will be. So AI is growing immensely. So I'm impressed by AI. So what I'm really not impressed with is these lies, these public lies, and the corruption, and the jargon, and the BS. And that's the purpose of this video. And obviously, I can't overpower these huge corporations. All I can say is my opinion as an engineer is, if they use solar power, because I know these GPUs and these CPUs and this little, I just know just a very touch. I'm just basically learning about information about this AI, artificial intelligence, and the systems and the components and everything. I'm just barely touching, beginning. This is a new area because I was a mechanical engineer opposed to electrical, so it's kind of a whole new field. But what's butting heads with me is I know that these things that meant these bitcoins or this AI or whatever, they consume vast amounts of energy or electricity, and so they want to use dangerous sources for power. So I believe in offshore wind and solar panels, and I believe they're cheaper and they're more effective and they're more cost effective than nuclear power. So I can't go into detail about classified work that I did. But I used to have really, I don't, security clearances that are that high, they're only good for a certain period of time. So I used to have a really high security clearance, so I got to see some stuff, be around some stuff. So where I'm disagreeing with is, I'm disagreeing with, if they're going to use nuclear power for any of this stuff, for any of this AI, I refuse to be a part of it. It takes thousands of years for stuff that's radioactive to become unradioactive. I don't want to get into details about the systems, other than I'll just say that the systems become contaminated. Everything becomes contaminated from working with the radioactive materials that's involved with the materials, the PPE. Just everything becomes contaminated. There are a lot of work, there are a lot of maintenance, and there's a lot of moving components, and there's a lot of things that can go wrong. And I really am against using nuclear power, is why I made this video. And I'm not going to be able to stop this. And these people are going to outline me on the media, even though I know what the truth is. This video will probably go nowhere. But using nuclear power, they need to dump nuclear power. Okay, so you have like a nuclear submarine, right? So it can't sit up on the surface and soak up the sun with solar panels, right? Or it can't hang out up on the surface for the wind and all that, but it could use currents underneath the water to charge. Then also they do run on electrical. So subs, aircraft carriers are obsolete because they have hypersonic missiles now. So carriers, they used to use nukes for those reactors. But they're obsolete because you can just hit one with, I mean, they should have figured that out years ago. As if you just sued an ICBM at its side, where it's just sort of, there's no way they're going to stop that thing. Or on reentry, they're not going to stop that thing. I mean, if they want to take out a carrier, their carriers are obsolete now. They have been for quite a while. So there's no real reason for nuclear power. And for these for AI and so forth, far as I'm concerned, there's no use for nuclear power. So they're going to bury this video or whatever, and they're going to ignore this video, and they're going to try to lie about it. But it is not the cheapest, safest source of energy. Nuclear energy, from what I know from my experience, is really, really dangerous. And they should stay away from it, and they should abandon it and get out of it as an energy source as soon as possible. And they talk about there's mass reserves of natural gas in all other parts of the world. They still have oil and coal, unfortunately, and some other things that they can supplement occasionally, but they should go towards clean energy, is what I'm trying to say as a mechanical engineer. It should be their focus for their power source. And if it takes a while to ramp up, it's worth it, rather than trying to make a quick buck. Okay, so I'm going to get down and dirty. And I've been to Hiroshima. I've been to the Hiroshima War Museum. And so I've seen the direct effects of what a nuclear bomb can do to people, and the horrible things that it can do to people. And then I didn't go to Nagasaki. That's another one. I went to Fukushima Daiichi 1. What happened was there's a maintenance gate that was open. So I should not have been able to go into where I went into to get as close as I did to the reactor. But I probably got, I estimate, between 400 meters, 500 meters. And this was 2-3 years after it happened, so it's still pretty hot. And I got radiation poisoning off that. Not real bad, but I did get radiation poisoning from that. So, yeah, not bad enough for skin burns and all that stuff, but I did get exposed on that. Other jobs I've worked on before, I got exposure. Then I have friends of mine that worked on so those Then we have Chernobyl. I've never been over there, so I can't say anything about that. Um, uh, Hanford. Hanford. I knew some engineers that worked for Hanford. They are no longer with us, and the cause for their passing away was related to their employment. I'll just say it like that. Also, Hanford, Washington, um, is currently leaking radioactive waste into the Columbia River, which the Columbia River used to have some of the oldest sturgeon in the fish in the world. Sturgeon are famous for their eggs. I guess the, the great czars of Russia or people or different peoples like the sturgeon eggs, caviar they call it, or whatever. So on that river, the Columbia River, there's nuclear waste gradually leaking into that. Then that's why I'm just really against using nuclear power, and I think they should stop all to shut that stuff down and or wean their way off and find other sources of energy that are safer and better for the environment. If you don't care about the future and you just want to destroy the planet and get on with World War III, and that's the way it's supposed to go down, then that's the way it's going to happen. But I'm kind of against it. So this other thing I'm going to bring up is WOOPS, WOPS. So it was basically they're going to build some nuclear reactors in Washington State for power, and it was just a huge freaking waste of money. So when these people tell you, or these other people will tell you, uh, I can tell you as a mechanical engineer from my experiences that nuclear is most expensive. It is more expensive than solar or wind, regardless of what they tell you. Also, you can use tidal, you can use the moon. The moon creates currents, moves the ocean around, gravity. You can use the ocean currents to turn turbines. I don't need to go into detail about systems unless you want to pay me some money to build some systems as an engineer, work on a team with an engineer, then maybe I'd be willing to do so. But um, there's lots of other sources, clean or sources of energy than using nuclear. So that's basically this long drawn out video from my childhood, how I started, how I got into mechanical engineering and all that stuff. And so I'm just really, if they tell you it's a waste of money, the just the people that want to, the only place nuclear belongs is nowhere, you know, other than if you want it on the tip of a nuclear warhead. That's the only place for it. Is if you want to destroy something, you know. It's horrible. It's expensive, and they should avoid it. And being realistic, I probably I can't stop the powers that be that want to enforce this policy and make this thing happen. But it's not the cheapest source of energy. That is a freaking lie. That is a lie. Nuclear energy is not the cheapest source of energy.